I believe one of the most valuable benefits for combat veterans is also one of the least talked about. And most of you have probably never even heard of it. And that's really not your fault. The truth is, the system isn't built to make things really clear for us. It's built on fine print, acronyms, and years of silence that leave too many of us walking away with less than we deserve. I talk to veterans every single week who served 20 years, deployed multiple times, jumped out of planes, taken rounds, or blown out knees, backs, and shoulders doing the job, and yet they're barely scraping by on what's left after the VA offsets the retirement pay. These are guys who led troops in combat, women who fled medevac missions under fire, Marines who carried their brothers off the battlefield, and they're out here trying to figure out how to make a rent because nobody ever told them they could get both their VA disability pay and their full retirement pay at the same time. That's right. That's what Combat Related Special Compensation, or CRSC, was created for. But almost nobody's explaining it. And that's a problem. Because it could mean the difference between living check to check and finally getting the financial breathing room you earn when you put your body and your life on the line. This isn't about handouts. It's about honoring what was promised to you and making sure you're not penalized for the injuries that came from doing your job in combat. So if you've ever felt like you gave everything and somehow got shortchanged, this episode is for you. It's called CRSC, Combat Related Special Compensation. And here's the wild part. It literally allows you to get paid twice, your full military retirement and your full VA disability at the same time. If your injuries were combat related, that is. Now, if you're hearing that and thinking, there's no way, I thought we weren't allowed to double dip, you're not wrong, at least under normal rules. For decades, veterans who served 20 plus years, who fought, bled, and sacrificed, had to watch their military retirement check shrink because their VA disability pay was subtracted from it. Basically, the government said you could have one or the other, but not both. Think about that for a second. You served your country for 20 years or more, you earned your retirement, and then you were injured in combat on top of that. And somehow that injury cost you part of the retirement you worked your entire life for. That never sat right with me, I'll be honest. And honestly, it shouldn't sit right with any of us. That's why CRSC exists in the first place. It was designed to fix a fundamental injustice to say, if your injuries came from combat, hazardous duty, or instruments of war, we're not going to penalize you for that. It's the government's way, finally, of saying, we see you, we know you didn't get hurt jogging on a track, you got hurt jumping out of planes, clearing houses, flying missions, or training for war. CRSC acknowledges that distinction. It's not a handout. It's recognition. Recognition that the cost of combat shouldn't come out of your retirement check. And yet, most veterans have never even heard of it. I can't tell you how many times I've had a veteran look me in the eyes, they're wide, and say, wait, I can get both my retirement pay and VA pay? And my answer is always the same. If your disability is combat related, yes. The hard part isn't the entitlement. It's the awareness. Nobody tells you about that when you're getting out. Nobody sits you down during TAP and says, hey, by the way, there's a program that could put thousands of dollars back into your pocket every month. So you've got veterans out there who fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, you name it, living on half what they're entitled to because no one ever explained what CRSC is. That's why we're having this conversation today, because if you don't know what CRSC is, you can't apply. And if you don't apply, you're literally giving up money you earned through years of sacrifice. If you don't apply for CRSC, you could be leaving thousands of dollars on the table every single month. And here's the real kicker. That money is also tax-free. I've met veterans who've gone 5, 10, sometimes even 15 years without even ever hearing about this program. They thought the reduction in their retirement pay was just how it worked, like some unavoidable penalty for getting hurt. Meanwhile, they were missing out on tens of thousands of dollars that could have gone towards paying off a mortgage, covering their kids' college tuition, fixing that truck sitting in the driveway, or simply giving them the breathing room they've more than earned after a lifetime of service to this country. And I want to be very clear. This isn't just about the money. It's about dignity, because every month that passes without you applying is another month where the system quietly benefits from a lack of awareness. And that's not right. You fulfilled your end of the deal. You trained, deployed, sacrificed, and came home with the scars to prove it. The government shouldn't just keep the difference just because because nobody told you about a program that was designed for you. I sat across from veterans, some still walking with canes, some missing limbs, others fighting invisible wounds from years of combat, who choke up when they find out they were eligible all along. One Marine actually told me, I had to sell my motorcycle to keep my house out of debt. I I didn't know I could have been getting this extra $1,500 a month the whole time. And it hits hard because it's preventable. The truth is, once you apply and your CRSC is approved, it's more than just a financial win. It's validation. It's the system finally saying, we acknowledge what you went through. We acknowledge the injuries that came from combat, not from old age or bad luck, but from the job we set you to do. That recognition really does matter. For a lot of veterans, CRSC is the first time in years they feel seen by the institution that so often makes them feel invisible. It's not just another deposit in your bank account. It's a message that says, we remember how you got those scars. And that's powerful. I've seen families break down when that first retroactive payment hits. Sometimes it's 6 years worth of back pay all at once. Money that should have been there from the start. Money that helps pay down debt, cover financial bills, or finally take that long delayed family vacation without having guilt. But more than that, it's justice served. So let me put it plainly. If you don't apply, the government's not going to come knocking on your door to remind you to. You have to take action. You have to file because CRSC isn't automatic. It's earned, but it's also requested. And once you do get that approval letter, it's not just about money. It's about peace of mind. It's about closing the gap between what you gave and what you've been given. That's why this matters, not just financially, but personally. Let me give you a tale about a veteran I worked with, all right? So he was a former Army Ranger that I know. He spent over a decade jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, like most of us. He didn't think much about the long-term cost at that time. He loved the job, loved the team, loved the mission. That adrenaline of standing at the door of a C-130 in the middle of the night, green light flashing on, it's something that never leaves you. But one jump changed everything. A bad landing, heavy rut, crosswind, uneven terrain. He heard the crack before he hit the ground. His knee was completely shattered. His back was wrecked, and his days of running with the team and the regiment were over. He was medically retired, rated at 70% disabled by the VA. He had assumed, like most do, that his retirement pay would keep him stable. But then he started noticing that his checks were smaller than expected. Month after month, a big chunk of money gone. When he called to ask why, he was told, that's just how it works, Sergeant. You can't receive both your VA disability and your retirement. You have to wait for one or the other. And he accepted that as the truth because that's what most veterans do. We trust the system. We figure that people behind the desk know better than us. For years, he lived that way, lived off less, cutting corners, watching medical bills pile up while trying to keep food on the table for his family. He never complained, just like a good Ranger, just quietly adjusted like he had always done. Then one day, he heard about combat-related special compensation, CRSC. Turns out that jump injury, the one that ended his career, wasn't just training. It was a combat-related activity. Airborne operations are classified as hazardous duty under the CRSC criteria. So he gathered his records, his jump manifest, medical reports, DD-214, and even a few old photos from that team and regiment that showed that what they were doing that day. He submitted the CRSC claim with a note explaining the accident, thinking, what's the worst that could happen? A few months later, he got a letter back from his branch. Approved. Not only was his retirement pay restored to the full amount, he also received retroactive CRSC back pay for 6 years. 6 years of money that had been sitting in limbo. When he told me, he didn't smile right away. He just sat there, holding the letter and said, I didn't even know this program existed. Then it hit him, the weight of everything he carried for so long. Because this wasn't just about money for him. It was about recognition. For the first time since he'd been forced to hang up his uniform, he felt like someone was finally saying, you didn't just get hurt. You got hurt serving your country. And we see you for that. That letter changed everything. It meant he could finally breathe again. He paid off his debt, fixed up his house, took his family on a trip they'd been postponing for years. But more than that, it gave him a sense of peace of mind. The system that had taken something away from him finally gave him a little bit of it back. That's what CRC does. It's not charity. It's not a loophole. It's justice. Delayed? Maybe, but not denied. And every time I see a veteran like him open that approval letter, it reminds me why this all matters. Because for those of us who came home broken, either physically or mentally, validation means more than money ever could. So here is some teaching. Step 1, you need to check your eligibility. And I can't stress this enough. Don't assume you don't qualify. You'd be shocked how many veterans I talk to who automatically count themselves out, self-select out. They hear the word combat related and immediately think, well, I wasn't shot, I wasn't in direct firefights every day, so that probably doesn't apply to me. But that's where most people get it wrong. Combat related doesn't just mean you were hit by enemy fire. It covers a whole range of circumstances that are directly tied to your service, especially the kind of hazardous, high risk duties that come with the job. If you're a retired veteran, meaning you're receiving or entitled to receive military retirement pay, and you have a VA disability rating of 10% or higher for a condition that was the result of combat related activity, you could qualify for CRSC. So, what exactly counts as combat related? It could be that knee you blew out during airborne operations or a hard parachute landing. It could be tinnitus or ringing in your ears or hearing loss from weapons fire, demolitions, or being around heavy machinery. It could be a back or neck injury from dismounting vehicles under full combat load. It could be a respiratory condition from exposures to burn pits, chemical agents, or even munition-related toxins. Because under CRSC, those exposures fall under instruments of war. It might even be PTSD or other mental health conditions that stem from combat or hazardous service. The truth is, most veterans have at least one condition that qualifies. They just don't realize it. I've met veterans who never deployed but spent years on airborne status, constantly jumping, carrying heavy equipment, and training under live fire conditions. That's still considered a hazardous duty. Or take EOD techs, right? They are demolition specialists. Every controlled explosion they participated in counted as hazardous service. Every blast wave, every concussion, it all adds up. And here's the thing. You don't need every disability to be combat related. Even one qualifying condition at 10% or higher can open the door for CRSC. So before you say, nope, that's not me, I want you to go pull your VA rating decision letter out right now and your VA code sheet. The code sheet is gold. It lists every condition you were rated for, along with the diagnostic code and the rationale the VA used to connect it for service. So go do this right now. Pull that sheet up, look at each condition, ask yourself, did this happen during employment? Did this come from hazardous duty like, say, jumping, flying, diving, demolitions, or combat training? Was I ever exposed to an instrumentality of war, like military vehicles, weapon systems, or chemical agents? If the answer is yes to any of those, write it down. That's your evidence, your starting point, because eligibility for CRSC isn't about what your unit were in or what medal you have. It's about how you got injured. You could have been a mechanic working on vehicles hit by IEDs, a pilot doing low altitude training runs, or a ranger on a static line jump that went wrong. If it was combat related or hazardous by nature, it still counts. And here's something most people don't realize. If your injury or illness is secondary to a combat related condition, it may still qualify. For example, you injured your back on a jump, and years later you develop nerve damage, radiculopathy, or depression from chronic pain. Those are secondary to the original combat-related injury, and they can be considered too. That's why step one is the foundation of this entire process. If you don't understand your eligibility, you can't move forward. So before you even think about filing, take the time to know your case, your own case, because when you understand how your injuries happen to you, you can connect the dots for your branch, the VA and the DFAS. And that's what turns a denied claim into an approved one. Step two, you need to gather the right documentation. This is where most veterans either overdo it or underdo it. They either send in 1,000 pages of irrelevant medical records, hoping the VA or DFAS will somehow find what matters, or they send too little, leaving huge gaps that get their claim denied. The key here is targeted documentation. Remember, CRSC isn't about every ache and pain you've ever had. It's about proving that one or more of your service-connected conditions were the direct result of combat, hazardous duty, or instruments of war. So what does that look like in plain language? You're building a paper trail that connects 3 dots. What happened, where and when it happened, and that it happened because of combat-related activity. So let's break that down. Start with your service medical records. These are the foundation of your case. You want to find the treatment notes, sick call slips, or medical board documents that show the injury occurred while you were in service, ideally with references to how it happened. If you were treated after a jump, a blast, or an accident during a live fire exercise, look for that entry that describes it, even if it's just a line that says, injured left knee during airborne operations. That one sentence could make all the difference. If you don't have your records on hand, don't panic. This is a common thing. You can request them from the National Personnel Record Center or through the VA's record request process. The key is to identify the right records, not just dump everything into an envelope. Next, you need to look for after-action reports or incident reports. These can sometimes be real gold. They can come from your unit, from safety investigations, or even from training accidents. If your injury occurred during a mission, an airborne operation, a demolition range, or while driving a military vehicle, there's often an official report tied to it. I've seen veterans submit a simple paragraph after an after-action review. That one that mentioned their name, the incident, and that that right there was enough to confirm the injury was combat related. Decorations, medals, awards, and citations are often another major piece of evidence. If you earned a Purple Heart, Combat Action Badge, Combat Infantry Badge, Combat Medic Badge, or any medal with a citation that references engagement with the enemy or hazardous duty, include it. Those awards speak for themselves. They prove you were in harm's way. And don't overlook smaller awards or commendations. Sometimes a meritorious service medal citation or even a certificate of achievement includes a sentence about a specific operation or mission that connects the dots. Then pull your VA decision letter and your rating code sheet. The VA decision letter confirms your service-connected disabilities and the percentage ratings. The code sheet tells the story behind each one. It's where you'll find the diagnostic codes and any notes about the origin of the injury. If your VA decision says something like, condition incurred during deployment in Iraq, or result of training accident while performing hazardous duty, highlight it. That's exactly the kind of language CRSC boards look for. Finally, gather any supporting statements or documentation that fills in the gaps. If there's no direct report of your incident, a buddy statement from someone who was there can carry real weight. The person doesn't have to be an officer or a commander, just someone credible who witnessed or can confirm the event you were at. For example, you blew out your shoulder during a live fire range in Afghanistan, and your medic treated you in the field, but it never made it into your permanent record. A sworn statement from that medic can bridge the gap. And remember, quality over quantity. Don't send in 500 pages of unrelated medical records, hoping that something sticks. The board isn't going to sift through your entire medical history. They're looking for clear, relevant evidence that connects the dots. Think of it like building a case file. A few strong pieces of proof are better than a mountain of noise. Highlight dates, locations, and key language that ties your injury to combat or hazardous service. Be your own best advocate. Nobody else is going to do that legwork for you. And here's a pro tip. Include a short cover letter or memo summarizing your evidence. Lay it out for them, clear as day. Injury, right knee, occurred during airborne jump, January 2009, Fort Benning, Georgia. Supporting evidence, service treatment record dated 01/13/2009. Airborne training after action report, VA decision letter linking condition to hazardous duty. You'd be amazed how much easier you make their job and how much faster your claim moves through the process when you spell it out to them. The more organized, specific, and credible your packet looks, the more likely it is that the reviewer connects the dots the way you need them to. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about paperwork. It's about proof. Proof that what happened to you wasn't random or routine. It was combat related. And that's exactly what CRSC was created to honor. Step 3, file DD Form 2860 with your specific branch. And don't delay. This step sounds simple, but it's the one that separates the veterans who talk about getting what they deserve from the ones who actually do. Because here's the truth. Combat-related special compensation isn't automatic. Nobody's going to tap you on the shoulder one day and say, hey, Sergeant, looks like we owe you 6 years of back pay. You have to claim it. You have to initiate the process. And the sooner you do, the better. Why? Because there's a 6-year statute of limitations on back pay. That means if you wait, every month that goes by could be literally the money you never get back. Let me give you a hard example. Let's say you were medically retired in 2015 and your VA rating included a combat-related condition. Back then, right? If you file now in 2025, you could still get back pay, but only for the past 6 years. Everything before that, gone. And I've seen it happen. Veterans who waited too long because they didn't know or because they got overwhelmed by the system and the paperwork. They ended up losing tens of thousands of dollars that should have been theirs. Don't let that happen to you. So here's exactly what to do. You need to download and fill out DD Form 2860 It's the official CRSC application. You can get it directly from the Department of Defense website. Don't try to fill it out in your web browser. Download it to your computer, open it up using an Adobe Acrobat Reader so it saves properly. 2, be precise and thorough. This isn't the time to be vague. In the section where it asks for the nature of your injury, be specific. Write injury sustained during parachute operation in Landingfall, 2009, Afghanistan airborne operation under hazardous duty orders. The more context you provide, names, units, dates, locations, the easier it is for the reviewer to connect the dots for you. Number 3, attach your supporting documentation. Include your VA decision letter, your DD-214, relevant service medical records, and any after-action report citations or memos that link the injury to combat or hazardous duty. Remember step 2. This is where all that groundwork pays off. Step 4, make copies of everything. Before you send in anything, make a complete copy of your application and save it. Any supporting documents, save it. Keep it organized in a folder, digital and physical. So if your claim gets delayed or questioned, you have every piece ready to go. Number 5, send your packet to your branch's CRSC division. Each branch has its own address, fax, and email contact. Make sure you're sending it to the correct one. If you're Army, don't be sending it to the Air Force. So for example, if you're Army, you're going to send it to Fort Knox. If you're Air Force or Space Force, you send it to Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. Navy and Marine Corps, you're sending it to Washington, Navy Yard, D.C. Coast Guard goes to Washington, D.C. You'll find the full mailing and email info list right on the back of your form, DD Form 2860. Once your claim is submitted, it typically takes a few months for your branch to review it. They'll verify your service, your injuries, and your VA ratings, then forward it to DFAS, which stands for the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. They calculate your payments and back pay. And here's the part I really want you to hear. If you get denied the first time, don't give up. CRSC is one of those programs where a lot of veterans win on the second try. Not because their story changed, but because their evidence got stronger. Maybe you found an old record that proves your injury happened during hazardous duty. Maybe a buddy wrote a statement confirming you were there. Maybe you clarify the connection in your explanation or personal statement. You can and should request reconsideration. Every service branch has a process for it. I've seen veterans go from denied to approved simply by tightening up their packet and resubmitting it. The CRSC boards aren't out to deny you. They're just looking for clear, defensible proof. And once you get approved, that's when the system catches up with your service. DFAS will perform a full audit of your pay history. If you're eligible for CRSC back pay, they'll calculate everything you're owed up to 6 years, often going back several years, and issue those payments retroactively. I've watched veterans receive life-changing sums of back pay. One guy I know, medically retired from the Marines, got an approval letter and a lump sum payment that covered 6 years of withheld pay. He told me it was the first time in a decade he could finally exhale. That's why I keep saying, don't delay. Every month you wait is another month of benefits that might never be recovered. You earned this. You served for it. And filing that one form, DD-2860, could be the moment everything starts to shift. So take the time, sit down tonight, print the form, start filling it out. Because once you hit send, you're one step closer to reclaiming what's yours. If you think you might qualify for CRSC, or even if you're not sure, don't wait on this. Click the link in the description and schedule your free consultation with us. Let's sit down together, veteran to veteran, and go through your records line by line. I'll help you figure out whether your conditions meet the combat-related criteria, what evidence you already have, and what's still missing. Because here's the truth. This process can feel overwhelming. I get it. You're dealing with VA paperwork, military acronyms, old records that are hard to find, and sometimes it feels like the system is designed to wear you down until you give up. But that's why we exist here at Xterra Health. We know the process inside and out, and we speak the language of both medicine and the military because we're all veterans. We can help you identify what's truly combat-related under the law, prepare your documentation properly, and make sure your application goes in strong the first time. And if you've already applied and were denied, don't lose hope. We can review your denial letter, help you find the missing link in your evidence, and guide you through the reconsideration process. Many veterans win on the second try anyways when their packet is presented in the right way. So if you're watching this and something in your gut is saying, this might be me, trust that instinct. You've got nothing to lose by checking and everything to gain. Whether it's an injury from a jump, a blast, or even training under hazardous conditions, if it happened in service and it changed your life, it deserves to be recognized. You sacrificed enough. Don't let paperwork be the reason you missed out on what you earned in combat. Click the link now, schedule your consult, and let's make sure your service and your sacrifice are finally honored the way they should be. If you took one thing away from this video, let it be this: CRSC isn't some hidden loophole. It's the government's way of righting a wrong that went on for far too long. For years, veterans like us were told we could receive both retirement and disability pay, even when our injuries were from combat training or missions that broke our bodies, but never our spirit. CRSC fixes all of that. It's the acknowledgement that your service, your sacrifice had a cost, and that cost shouldn't come out of your retirement check. So if you've ever felt like you gave everything and somehow still got shortchanged, this is your moment to do something about it. Click the link in the description. Again, schedule your free consultation. Let's walk through this together. I'll help you figure out exactly where you stand, what you're missing, and how to get your claim submitted the right way. Because no veteran should have to fight another battle just to get what they've already earned. Now, before I let you go, I want you to do one more thing. Hit the subscribe button, like the video, turn on notifications, and make sure you catch my next video, which is sleep apnea and the ultimate winning guide. You're going to want, in this video, you're not going to miss it because we're going to break down exactly how to prove sleep apnea as secondary to other service-connected conditions like PTSD, chronic pain, rhinitis, intermediate step of obesity. I'm going to show you how to structure your claim so it actually wins. Because I don't just want you to understand these benefits, I want you to master them. So stay tuned, stay focused, and as always, stay mission ready.